My boyfriend broke up with me because of red flags after listening to his best buddy. Then he begged me to take him back. Here's what happened. I, 23 female, have been in a relationship with my boyfriend Eric, 24 male, for almost 8 months now. Eric has never had a steady girlfriend for this long before, and most of his exes have been flings that have never lasted for more than 3 or 4 months. So, of course I like to think that this relationship is special for him, but a few days ago I realized that this might not be the case. Eric's best friend Olivia, 24 female, has been his neighbor for over 14 years now. They met back when they were 10 years old and have been best friends ever since. They went to the same school, same college, and even work at the same place now. So, when I say best friend, I really mean best friend. Eric doesn't do a single thing without consulting Olivia first. And even his decision to date me wasn't just his own. Like he told me later, every girl he'd ever dated had to be Olivia approved first. And if she wanted him to break up, he would have to break up. I guess this was also part of the reason that things never seemed to work out with his exes. Anyway, he only told me about this 4 months into the relationship because he felt like it was about time, and by then I was already in deep with him, so I decided to stay. Yeah, I know, bad decision. Had I known about his weird dependence on Olivia, I would have never said yes to even a first date. As for my relationship with Olivia, it's nothing too bad, or rather, it was right up until a few days ago. Olivia and I have met a fair few times, and we've always been civil to each other. I used to get this feeling that she was always trying to show me, really subtly, that Eric would always be hers first whenever it was the three of us. And even though it did make me feel kind of awkward, I never said anything about it. She'd always make me feel really excluded, and I'd never feel truly comfortable around her. I tried my best to be friends with her initially, but my efforts were in vain, because she'd already made up her mind and was against it, I guess. And to make matters worse for myself, and for her, I decided to turn into competition for her as well. So, she definitely wasn't going to take that lying down. Coming to the incident that happened a few days back, finally, around 5 days ago, I felt really sick, and since I live away from home for work, I didn't really have anyone to take care of me either. My roommate was on a trip, so I was really just all by myself. I usually wouldn't rely on a guy, but this time I chose to call my boyfriend and ask him to come to my place and help me out. He was a little hesitant at first, and I thought it was because he didn't want to catch whatever I had. So I told him that it was just a stomach bug and he'd be fine, but even then he seemed reluctant. So I asked him what was up, and that's when he told me that he had plans to watch a movie and then grab lunch with Olivia, so he wasn't sure if he'd be able to make it. I was already sick, so I wasn't feeling my best. And on top of that, Eric was putting Olivia above me. I'd always known that if it came down to it, he'd pick Olivia over me, but it stung nevertheless. So I ended up getting really pissed off and told him that he could date Olivia and hung up without another word. I didn't respond to any of his calls after that, but around an hour later, he finally did show up and apologize for what he'd done. I felt better when he came by, because if he hadn't, I really would have broken up with him. He told me that he'd canceled his plans with Olivia and had even brought me homemade soup, so I felt really good about him that day. We spent the day together, and by the time he left at night, I felt considerably better. But I didn't realize that my actions would have consequences. And the very next day, Eric ghosted me the whole day. No calls, no texts. I was a little panicked because I'd really thought that something bad had happened to him, so I kept trying to get through to him throughout the day but had no luck. At around midnight, he finally called me back, and he sounded very different from how he usually talks. He sounded serious and even kind of upset, and after asking me if I was feeling better, he told me that I might want to sit down for this. And then he proceeded to break up with me. Initially, I thought it was just a prank, but then he continued to speak and even told me that it was hard for him to come to this conclusion, but he'd finally realized that my behavior was nothing but just a bunch of red flags, and he couldn't be with me anymore. I was really confused because, as far as I was concerned, I hadn't ever said or done anything to him that would count as a red flag, at least not consciously. I'd always tried to be a good person and a good girlfriend, and so this was really a huge shock to me. I didn't even know what to say to that, so I just stayed quiet while he told me that he couldn't be with me anymore, and then hung up. I was so taken aback by the suddenness of this that I couldn't even process what had happened for a good few minutes. Just the day before that, we'd had such a good time together, and now he was telling me that he wanted to break up because I had red flags. None of it made sense to me, and I ended up crying myself to sleep because I couldn't even call him or text him for answers. After breaking up with me, he'd immediately blocked me everywhere, so there was literally no way for me to get closure or even answers. He didn't even have the decency to break up with me in person, even though we'd been together for a while now, and neither did he give me a proper explanation for what he did. I was really torn up about this for the next couple of days and was distracted everywhere, at work and even while doing chores. I just couldn't bring myself to accept that we were done just like that, and kept replaying our last few interactions in my head to try and understand what exactly had made him say that I had a bunch of red flags but drew a blank every time. The Olivia factor hadn't even occurred to me since I hadn't seen her for a few weeks, and I'd sort of forgotten about how she controlled Eric's life. Anyway, last night, I finally received a call from Eric, and I was sort of taken back since I wasn't expecting it. I'd just begun to process my breakup, so this was really soon for me. I answered the call, and as soon as I did, he started apologizing to me and didn't even give me a chance to say anything at first. He sounded hysterical, so I didn't interrupt him either and let him get it all out of his system. He told me that the other day he didn't even want to break up with me, and it was actually Olivia who'd made him do it. He told me that she didn't like the fact that I'd made him cancel plans with her, and had convinced him that it was a red flag and had even brought up a couple of other relatively normal things I do to make me seem like a huge red flag, and he admitted that he'd fallen for it as well. She'd fed him a bunch of BS about how I was trying to drive a wedge between them, and that was a red flag, and that even the little things I do, like cooking my favorite meals and buying clothes for him that I think would look good on him, are just tactics to change him and control his life. I couldn't believe that anyone would fall for such stupid crap and even break up over it, but I guess my boyfriend was an idiot. He then told me that he was sorry about everything and that he wanted to get back with me and was ready to do anything it took. I didn't say anything for a while because my blood was boiling and I could hardly control my anger. All this while, I'd been thinking that the breakup was my fault and was blaming myself, whereas in reality, it was all this wretched Olivia's fault, and she'd been completely fine. I should have known that she would definitely do something to get back at me because, after all, I'd stolen Eric from right under her nose. The day I was sick, his choosing to take care of me and canceling plans with her meant that I was competition now, and she couldn't have that, which is why she had to make sure she broke us up. It all finally added up now. Eric kept pleading with me on the call to take him back, and even had the audacity to mention that Olivia wouldn't be a problem for us, since he'd keep our relationship a secret from her now. I was appalled that even now, after all that had happened, he had the audacity to talk about Olivia. I didn't understand how he could be so blind to the way that woman was controlling his life, but honestly, that was his problem. Had he broken up with me for literally any other reason, I might have even considered taking him back. But I just couldn't accept the fact that he dumped me over something Olivia had said, without even bothering to think about the situation for himself. Clearly this guy was an idiot, and whether or not he kept our relationship private, Olivia would still keep controlling him, and he'd keep doing whatever she says like a puppet. And to be honest, the fact that even now he wasn't willing to admit that Olivia might not have his best interest at heart, and was even okay with hiding our relationship for the sake of their friendship, was a huge red flag for me. So, I had no intention of getting back with him anyway. I'd already made up my mind about that the very second he told me about what his real reason for the breakup had been. I'd cried enough over this guy, and he didn't deserve it, honestly. But I also couldn't just let things go without at least trying to put Olivia in her place, which is why I did something really petty and manipulative. And even though I'm not particularly proud of it, I do think it was necessary. I told my boyfriend last night that I'd only get back with him on one condition. He'd have to tell Olivia about his decision first and tell her off for controlling his life. He would have to confront her and tell her that she was not his boss and that's why he was getting back with me. Only if he did that would I get back with him, because if Olivia humiliated me, then I'd most definitely be repaying her the favor. When I told Eric what I wanted him to do, he was shocked and tried to get me to change my mind since this was extreme and unnecessary in his opinion. He tried his best to convince me not to make him do this, but I was hell-bent. I told him that only if he texted her what I asked him to would I get back with him, or else he could just say goodbye to me and stay broken up. He argued for a few more minutes, but then eventually he did send her those texts and even sent me a screenshot of it. And as soon as he did, I hung up and blocked him immediately after. I know it was petty and mean, but I couldn't help it. I'd been very upset for these past few days over our breakup, so this was the least that I could do. Aida for making Eric send Olivia those texts, especially when I had no intention of getting back with him in the first place. Update 1. So it's been 2 days since I last spoke to Eric and he hasn't been able to contact me ever since. Olivia can't get through to me either because of course I blocked her as well. I'd been feeling kinda guilty about what I'd made Eric do, but then I went through the responses here, and I guess I don't really have any reason to feel that bad about what I did. Eric did have a choice, and he chose to send Olivia those texts because he wanted to be with me, and not her. It's not like I forced him at gunpoint or whatever. He did what he wanted to do. Yeah, lying to him about getting back together was wrong, I'll admit that. But I don't think what I did was as bad as what had happened to me. He didn't think twice before making me believe that I was the red flag in our relationship, when it was actually him all along who did. Everything his so-called BFF asked him to do, without even caring about how it would affect the other person, or even his own life. He had no idea how horrible I'd felt during those few days that we were broken up, and I didn't have any answers and kept overthinking every little thing that I'd done only to end up even more confused than I was initially. So, pardon me if I don't feel particularly bad about what I did. I haven't told anyone that I've broken up with Eric yet, but I guess I'll have to start telling people soon, since just a few hours ago. One of my friends invited both Eric and me to her birthday party, so when I show up without him, I'll have to explain his absence. Anyway, I'm dreading that bit because I legitimately don't know what I'm going to tell people when they ask me why exactly we had to end our relationship since. We appeared pretty happy on the surface. I'll just have to come up with something, but it's fine. At least I'm done with that relationship now. Update 2. Hey guys, it's been almost a week since I broke up with Eric, and I'd thought that blocking both him and his BFF would mean that I don't have to interact with them ever again. That was not the case, unfortunately. This morning I received a call from a number I didn't recognize, so naturally I let it ring the first time. But then when they called me again, I answered it. It was Olivia on the line, and as soon as I heard her voice, I was about to hang up because I had absolutely zero interest in speaking to her. But then she said that if I hung up, it would just prove that I was a huge coward and was actually afraid of confronting her. Now, I shouldn't have let it get to me, but it did, so I ended up staying on the call. Olivia then went on to talk absolute crap about me right to my face and called me all sorts of things for what I'd done. She called me a sneaky little liar and said that she was glad that Eric and I had broken up now because he was too good for me anyway. Then she called me the B word, which is what really rubbed me the wrong way, and I totally snapped at her. I let her know exactly what I thought of her and told her that she was nothing more than a backup girlfriend for Eric and would probably spend her entire life trying to drive other girls away from him so that she could have him all to herself. I think I hit a nerve with that one because as soon as I said that, she started fumbling and sounded like she was about to cry. Taking advantage of that, I went even further and reminded her that she could scream at me all she wanted. But the truth was that the other night Eric did have the choice to not send those texts to her, but it was his decision and he'd chosen me over her. That was the last straw, and I could hear her burst into tears on the other end. I didn't even feel sorry for her because she was the one who had called me up to try and make me feel bad, but here she was, crying. I don't know if she and Eric are on speaking terms or not, but I hope she goes running to him to complain about what I said, and they come for me again because I would love the opportunity to put both of them in their place and remind them that I'm not just someone they can mess with and then get off scot-free. They're not the only ones with the license to hurt other people's feelings, and they need to remember that if they're so comfortable with dishing it out, then they should be equally okay with licking it up as well. So, update 3, hey there, 2 days back I'd received a call from Olivia, but it had ended pretty badly for her. And like I'd said, I was actually hoping that Eric would confront me about it, since it would give me a chance to tell them both off. And it finally happened today. The friend who'd introduced us to each other was throwing a party, and we were invited. She had invited Eric as well, because she didn't know that we'd broken up. Around an hour in, he walked into her house with Olivia beside him, and both of them looked ready to pick a fight. I pulled my friend aside and explained the whole situation to her, and even offered to leave early in case things went south. Because while I did want to cause a scene, I didn't want it to be at my friend's birthday because that would take away all the limelight from her, and that wouldn't be very nice. But my friend insisted that I stay. She confessed that she wouldn't mind if we confronted each other at the party because she herself was very keen to watch the drama unfold in person, especially after the things I told her. I had the decency to ignore both of them because if anyone was going to pick a fight, it had to be them. I was classier than that, but when it came to showing them their place, I was ready to stoop to the same level as them. So around half an hour after they arrived at the party, Eric approached me while I was speaking to another guy. I wasn't even flirting with him or anything, just making casual small talk. I guess he just wanted an excuse to put me down though. So he came up to me and made a remark about how I seemed to have already moved on from him as loudly as he could. He then went on to accuse me of being a cheater and a phony in front of everyone while they all stared at us. Olivia stood right behind him with this nasty smirk on her face, and I swear I wanted to slap that horrible smile off her face, but kept my urge under control somehow. Eric continued to talk crap, right to my face, and even brought up the phone call a few days ago and said that I'd been wrong about Olivia being the backup because it was actually me, since I wasn't even worth dating anyway. I ended up laughing in his face when he said that, because if I remember correctly, it was he who had come crawling back to me just a few days after dumping me because of what Olivia had told him. He'd had his turn to talk. Now it was my turn to expose him and his dear BFF for what they truly were. I told him that both he and Olivia were way below my league and that he should have considered himself lucky that he'd somehow managed to convince me to date him in the first place because, as far as I was concerned, he was a spineless puppet that Olivia controlled and no other woman would ever want him. At least I'd be willing to give him a chance, but he blew that as well. On top of that, his so-called BFF was the one who was sad and insecure enough to try and break us up just because he'd spent a day with me when I was sick, and she'd even used a new phone number just to speak to me. That's how important I was to her. Honestly, her actions were of insecurity and just revealed how pathetic she actually was. They really were a perfect match for each other, and I actually hope that they ended up together, because I don't think anyone else should have to deal with people like them. By then, the party had come to a halt, and everyone was staring at us silently. Eric had nothing to say, and just kept glaring at me, so Olivia, without any real comeback, just started hurling expletives at me, and she was literally all up in my personal space. I think she was trying to provoke me into hitting her, so she'd have an excuse to hit me back, but I kept my cool because I didn't even want to touch her. Once she started having a breakdown, Eric decided that it was time to leave, because obviously they didn't want to be more embarrassed than they already were. Yet again, their sad little attempt to humiliate me had backfired on them, and they were the ones who had to leave. The poor guy literally had to drag Olivia away since she wasn't willing to just accept that she was done for. After they left, my friend came up to me and told me how badass that was of me, and I think all of us had a good laugh about what happened. We got back to partying and ended the evening on a good note with a lot of drinks and a fabulous dinner. I'm happy about what happened because I got the closure I needed. Update 4. Hey guys, super quick and short update here. I just learned that Olivia and Eric are finally in a relationship, LOL. It's been 3 months since our little showdown at the party, and I guess they realized I was right. No other sane person would put up with them individually, so they should just date each other instead. I heard from a friend of a friend since I'm not in touch with them anymore. I'm also seeing a new guy who's just my type, and I hope this works out and he doesn't also have some psycho best friend that he isn't telling me about right now.